be on nearly every hiker's bucket list, today we are heading as far south as you can imagine. We're far, far past the equator to the very end of South America. We go where the Andes meets the Pampas, or the grasslands, where Argentina and Chile combine to showcase the jaw-dropping chiseled granite peaks and glaciers in the land we call Patagonia. You'll see soaring condors with 10-foot wingspans, cuddly-looking guanacos, an animal that looks like a camel and a llama had a fling. You might even be lucky enough to spot a puma in the Torres de Paine National Park. But you can be sure that the charming and adorable Magellan penguins will make you crack a smile. This is Patagonia. It is wild, it is challenging, but it's doable. And is it ever worth it? Welcome to episode 12 of the Active Travel Adventures podcast. I'm your host, Kit Parks. Today we're checking in with not one, but two women who have taken the adventure trip of a lifetime to magical Patagonia. Our first guest is 45-year-old Erin Chambers, and she describes her adventure to Patagonia with her husband, Jeremy. While they mostly hiked, their adventure also included a little kayaking and biking. Then we'll hear from Sandra Long. You actually met her briefly on episode number 10, detailing the benefits of adventure travel. She's a remarkable 86-year-old woman who is still incredibly active. She still adventure travels and competitively dances. Amazing. Sandra hiked Patagonia at the age of 82, if you can believe it, which is a challenge no matter what the age. Just goes to show you, if you keep in shape and you train, you can do this adventure. Sandra's trip was strictly a hiking adventure. Erin and Jeremy's trip with my affiliate tour company, Active Adventures, was a little bit more rigorous. Nonetheless, there are some difficult days on both trips, so to get the maximum enjoyment, I recommend that you train for these adventures. I've got a free training guide link on the website. This adventure ranks a 4 or possibly even a 5 out of 5, but it is doable if you do train. But like the other difficulty 5 adventure to Mont Blanc on episode number 7, this is definitely worth it. Outside of the fabulous hikes along the base of Mount Fitzroy, and Fitzroy is that iconic jagged granite mountain peaks that you see in many of the photos that you'll ever see of Patagonia, you'll also hike to the Torres del Paine National Park in Chile and Los Glaciares National Park in Argentina, plus some others. You're going to get to see the massive penguin colony on Magdalena Island, visit the famous Perito Moreno Glacier, kayak and cruise in Gray Lake, and hopefully get to see some glaciers calving. Glacier calving means when the glacier breaks off into the water, it's majestic when you see it on film, and hopefully you'll get to see it in person. On the website, activetraveladventures.com, I put a spectacular video of glacial calving at Perito Moreno Glacier. You got to see it. It's absolutely stunning. Erin and her husband did the Condor 2-week-long adventure. If you have the time, take a few days like Sandra did in Buenos Aires and possibly even an extra day or so in Punta Arenas. You can get lots of planning details with the free travel planner that goes with this episode. You'll find the link in today's show notes and also on the activetraveladventures.com resources page. To begin with, could you please just tell us a little bit about yourself, perhaps how old you are and how you started getting into adventure travel?
I am 45 years old. I'm originally from Tennessee, and we moved to Boise, Idaho about 5 years ago. Me and my husband do not have kids, and so we took this opportunity to try to start traveling the world and found out it was our passion. So we got hooked up with Active Adventures because we wanted a company that we were still active. We are avid hikers and backpackers and campers. And so we hooked up with them for our New Zealand trip. And then we liked them so much, we did a second trip to South America.
You are physically fit as far as you said you're an active hiker. So where would you put yourself on a scale of fitness level where 5 is like super hardcore and 1 is a couch potato?
Probably a 2, to be honest with you.
Okay.
It depends on the time of year, but, I'm a little bit older, and so I can tell that my physical fitness level has gone down over the past couple of years. But that doesn't excuse or knock me out of wanting to not do adventure trips. They're harder, I'll tell you, they are. And it really depends on how much effort a person puts into it with their training. I feel like I was more physically fit when I did the New Zealand trip because I put a little bit more effort into training. And to be honest, with the South American trip we just did, I hardly did any training at all, and it kind of kicked my butt. But I still was able to do most things, so it's all right.
Did you always do adventure trips on your vacations, or is this something relatively new?
We've kind of progressed into it. Since we've been married for about 10 years, we started off with national park trips out west and started with Yosemite. And we fell in love with our national parks in the United States. And at that time, we were living in Tennessee. And so we would come out west every year and pick a different park. That's one of the reasons why we moved out west, to be honest with you, to be closer to the parks. But really, the New Zealand trip was our first true active travel trip that we took. In the national parks, we did a lot of hiking, but nothing compared to the 2 trips that we've recently taken.
Erin's going to talk to us about her New Zealand adventure in a future episode. What is the appeal of adventure travel, like the types that we're talking about today?
I think the appeal for us, and my husband says this all the time, it's kind of like adult camp, where you have people that are experts on the country, on the culture, and they're telling you what to do. And so it kind of, you don't really have to think about it that much. And that's in a way relaxing, and you get in a van and they take you someplace and they say, now here, hike this mountain, or now we're going to, get on this bike, or now we're going to kayak this river or lake or whatever. And so for us, it kind of takes a lot of the thinking out of it, and you're relying on the experts of this country to tell you the best places to go, so you don't have to plan as much. The other perk with the travel adventure companies is they really take care of you. We eat well. The places that we stay are fantastic. Some of them are a little bit more rugged, but that's cool because you're in the back country. And so again, you really, as a traveler, don't have to put too much effort into it, besides just the physical fitness part of it.
That's what I like too, Erin. The tour companies make all the arrangements. They've done all the planning and figured out all the logistics. So all you have to do is just get there and then go on the adventure. I just love how your husband calls it camp for adults. I'm totally stealing that. Do you find that you bond quickly with your fellow adventurers on these trips?
Actually, yeah. And I am an introverted personality, and I actually can look forward to being in a group of people that I don't know, getting to know them. They're from all over the world. One of the things that I enjoy the most is listening to their travel stories and where they have explored in their past travels to get ideas for us. On this recent trip to South America, we had some South African couples, some Australian couples, Canadian and Puerto Rican, and then American. So it was a wide range of people from all over the world.
How old were the folks on the Patagonia trip?
The Patagonia trip was ages from, I think, mid-20s. The oldest person we had on the trip, this is pretty impressive. He was from Australia. He was 72 years old. A couple of years before, he wanted to be the oldest man on Everest, and he was there when the earthquake hit Everest. And I would say the average age on this trip in Patagonia was probably mid-40s. And these older couples out-hiked the younger couples by far.
Interesting.
They were machines. They were really cool. So for people who might be a little hesitant on, I'm too old, or I'm not in this particular physical fitness right now today, that really should not hold anybody back from doing adventure travel, because you can train and age is just a number.
Perfect. And with age comes wisdom, of course. I think as we get older, we know the limitations of our bodies, so we know it's important for us to train. And that's why you're probably finding that the older folks have conditioned themselves and their bodies to prepare for these adventures instead of just going there and winging it like probably a lot of the young folks do. And I know that I have found that the excitement and anticipation of going on an adventure trip makes it fun to do the training. Can you give us a brief overview of your trip?
It was awesome. We went to both Chile and Argentina. And so we basically spent half of our time in Chile and half in Argentina. And the two biggest locations that we explored was we did the W Trek in Chile, and then in Argentina we were at Fitzroy. And so there was a lot of other things in between, such as glaciers and other kind of shorter hikes. But those are really the two places that we explored the most.
When you look back on your trip, what comes to mind first?
The wind. I really enjoyed being in a country that was truly so far removed from the United States. And we kept saying to ourselves, we're at the bottom of the world. But the people were fantastic. And those mountains are just absolutely incredible. It was hard. It was a very tough physical trip. I think not only for me being kind of at a 2 or 3 level, but for everybody. But it was so worth it. It was amazingly beautiful.
You said there's times that was hard. What was the hardest day?
I say the hardest day on the trip was on the W Trek. We were supposed to catch a boat because we were done. It was the end of our trip. We were at Gray Glacier, and we were supposed to catch a boat to take us out. Because the winds were so high, I think they were like 70 or 80 miles an hour while we were there, the boat decided to cancel. And so we had to hike 7 miles that we were not anticipating hiking to try to catch another boat to take us out of that region. And so that was the hardest thing, because you weren't expecting to having to hike 7 more miles. But we had to do it in order to get out. And I would have hiked 7 miles or more to be safe. And the winds, and the boat and on the water was a little sketchy. So I think that the park made a good decision to do that.
I find when these unexpected obstacles come up that I get proud of myself for working through them. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, I'm absolutely surprised. I mean, we were exhausted. We had hiked 40 miles in, I think it's 4 days, so about 10 miles a day, over all kinds of terrain, in the wind, in the rain. And yeah, you have a feeling of accomplishment when you get done with something like that. Then they tacked on 7 more miles to get out. Then you really feel like you've accomplished something.
Those end up being my favorite memories, or at least the best stories.
I don't think I would strongly say it was my favorite memory.
Do you have any other fun stories you'd like to share?
The most memorable hike for me was a Fitzroy hike. And I think that was 12 miles altogether. So it was a pretty long day. The elevation was not bad going in or coming out. It was a last section where you hike up to a viewpoint to see the mountain range. And that was a really tough hike. It wasn't very long, maybe a mile and a half, but it was almost straight up. But you get up to the top and you're looking at this iconic mountain range that you see in all these pictures. And I could have stayed up there all day.
While out there, were you ever concerned that you weren't going to be able to do it?
You have it in your head that you're done. Your feet are sore, your body's sore, you're just exhausted from hiking in the conditions, and then you find out that you've got to do it again. So I had a lot of reservations the evening before. Now, when it comes the day of, you do it because you really don't have a choice, to be honest with you. I did rely on the doctors in the group that I talked about, and he helped treat some of my blisters that were causing me some pain. I got some energy bars from other people on the trip that truly, really did help, and you just kind of put your mind to it and you do it.
Then what happened?
So we get back to the Rufugio and we have to wait, I think, about 3 hours before the next boat comes to take us out. So we have a long period of time from when we get done hiking to when we can actually leave. Alcohol was consumed. We had snacks and just kind of hung out with everyone. We played cards. Some people in our group played cards. We were in this large kind of cafeteria. So we were with all kinds of different hikers from all over the world in different groups. There was some singers. I think that they might have been from Switzerland that just started singing a cappella. I mean, it was kind of a party atmosphere.
How did it make you feel?
We were thrilled that we made it back, but then the next challenge, to be honest with you, was getting on the boat to take us completely out. And the winds are still really, really high, 70, 80 miles an hour. And we're on this beautiful lake, bright, clear blue. There's about 100 hikers that are on the boat to take us out. It was a little bit nerve-wracking. The waves were huge on this lake because of the winds. But when we started moving away from the W track, we got this view that is another one of the iconic views of Patagonia that you see, that we really were not able to see on the W track because we were in the mountains. And so that was really worth it, getting off of the boat and riding out of there in the van and being able to see the full scope of the mountains and the Toro del Paine.
So even after a challenging day like that, do you still wake up the next morning excited and raring to go?
Yeah, because you knew what the day was going to bring. And, again, it's the landscape and the atmosphere that you're in leads to that excitement. Because you're in beautiful countries. And so if your passion is hiking and looking at beautiful scenery, then you're automatically excited.
Tell us about some of the people you met.
For the Patagonia trip, when we got to our flight into Santiago, we were unable to get a flight out to Punta Arenas, and we missed our flight. And we missed our flight with like 15 other people. And everyone else, it seemed to be, was also hiking the W track. So the funny thing was, we were able to get on the next plane out. We had a little bit of a layover. But then we kept seeing this one particular couple on the W track that we had made a connection with in Santiago. So that was a little cool. And we'd, give each other high fives and like, we're doing it. We made it. We're here. We're doing it. So that's really cool.
Who else?
We met a lot of people on the W track. We stayed in refugios, which are basically, again, kind of backpacker hostels. And we stayed with one woman, and she was doing the hike solo. And so she told us about her stories with that. I think she was German. And again, that's really cool to meet some people on the trail, find out where they're from, find out why they're doing this.
Why do you do these kinds of adventure trips?
I think, again, it's a passion for being outside. It's a passion for being in these landscapes that you are not normally in your day-to-day life.
Tell us about the landscape.
It really depended on the area we were in. One thing that did surprise me is in a lot of the places that we stayed or just traveling from one place to another, it was what we consider in Boise, Idaho, kind of high desert or desert-like. Maybe if you think Americans can think of like Utah or Wyoming. So that was a little bit of a surprise for me. And then other areas were more lush when you're closer to the mountains. It's really at sea level in all of the locations of Patagonia, except when you're on these trails in the mountains. And I think that that's what makes them so dramatic, is because they're coming straight from sea level. So they're not really that high. I mean, the Rocky Mountains have a lot higher mountains than what's in Patagonia, but so dry, desert-like. I really wouldn't say alpine, of what we think of in America as kind of alpine wilderness.
What kind of wildlife did you see?
We saw a lot of condors, and the animal that is down there, guanaco, I think that's how you pronounce it. It's kind of a cross between a llama and a camel. We really wanted to see puma, but we were not able to.
Erin shared some amazing photographs. Be sure to check them out at activetraveladventures.com. On a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate this, with 5 being the hardest?
5. It was hard. It was hard. Yeah, it was very challenging and hard.
Challenging, yes, but oh so worth it. But remember, folks, you really do want to train for this. Is there anything you'd have done differently?
I would have learned a little bit more Spanish. As I said, we were able to get by when we were on our own, especially in the airports and things like that. But I feel like learning more of the native language can always just be helpful.
What advice would you give folks?
Just do it. I think people in their lives make bucket lists or always wish or put things off. Well, we can't this year because of this, and we can't this year. And my advice is just do it. I mean, there's research out there that shows that spending money on experiences is a lot more rewarding in life than spending money on material goods.
How glad were you that you did this adventure on a scale of 1 to 10?
Definitely a 10.
Our next guest, Sandra, has got some insights and stories of her own to share about Patagonia. Sandra, to begin with, why Patagonia?
Well, I hadn't been there.
Okay.
I've been most everywhere else.
Right.
And I had seen enough material either in travel brochures, because I'm on the list. So Patagonia looked wonderful. It looked, so I started looking into it.
Sandra was smart to do her due diligence and making sure that she found an appropriate tour company for her activity level. And that is important because once you're on these adventures, you're committed and you must do the adventure, and you don't want to be dragging down your fellow teammates in your group. So do make sure that you've done the training if it's necessary, and I believe in this trip that you should do so, and match the adventure to your physical fitness level. And again, this is a doable adventure for anybody that's physically fit, particularly if you're willing to train. And by that, I mean just getting used to wearing a pack on your back and doing some aerobic activities. There are times your guide might be able to give you a harder or an easier route depending on how your body's feeling that day.
It was great. I mean, we'd be walking all day sometimes, but it was like there would be options. If you wanted the really steep route or if you wanted one that was more gradual and moderate.
But Sandra's adventure was by no means easy. She talks about one of her longer days.
The one day of 14 miles, I think it was the most challenging, but not dangerously so.
Mm-hmm.
It was more of endurance, and I had enough endurance to do that without a problem.
Did you find being in a group helpful on those challenging days?
Oh yeah. Well, you know when it's like being in the service. When you have a challenge and you're together, you help each other out and you bond because you're all in this challenge together. And so, I like, and it was only 12 in the group. I think this kind of travel, you bond. You have much more of a connection with your travel mates than you would on a regular tour.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you were doing? Did you do any glacier treks, or tell us a little bit about your days?
Yes, we did. I left San Diego 4 days early and spent that time in Buenos Aires, and then flew on down. I rented an apartment in Buenos Aires, and then flew down to El Calafate in Argentina. And it was there that we went out from that hotel. We went out on the first trip into, it was more of a moderate hike to get, so that the leader could get his feeling about the ability of everybody. And it was an interesting area because it was a petrified forest that was scattered in all these ravines and, over hills and down into valleys. And and so it was fascinating, as well as had enough degree of challenge that he could tell what we could do, and well, actually, we got some nice views of Mount Fitzroy from there.
Okay.
And right away, by day 2, we were, and this was in February, I think, we were experiencing a lot of wind. And the wind stayed with us for most of the trip. We had a lot of wind, which handicapped the photography. And one day when we were taking a boat out to the foot of the face of a glacier, on which we got crampons and trekked over the glacier for a while. When we got off the boat to scramble over boulders and all to get up to the where the glacier was, the wind was so strong that just standing up, you wouldn't want to stand up. You get blown over. And we were holding on to each other and helping each other over those boulders because they were huge. And that was probably the most physically challenging aspect of that trip, was just getting over those boulders in the wind in order to get up onto the ice field.
Don't they have a saying down there that you can experience all 4 seasons in one day?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. I believed it quickly.
Yeah. Did you have much rain or cold?
We didn't have any rain, but it was cold because of the wind coming off the glaciers.
Right.
Yeah, that was the way it was in Antarctica too. It was not temperature without the wind wasn't so cold, but boy, you had to be really bundled up and have your face covered and everything else when the wind came up off the glacier.
Patagonia is wild and rugged, and I do recommend that you take this trip with a guide. I do have information on my recommendations on my resources page and also on today's episode page as well. Thanks to Erin and Sandra for great information about Patagonia. It's a super terrific trip that should be on just about everybody's bucket list. It's difficult, but if you train for it, you're going to do just fine. Remember, there's a training link on today's website that'll work you through how to train for an adventure such as this. There's a free travel planning guide link also on the website, and some amazing photographs and videos. So be sure to check out activetraveladventures.com. If you've enjoyed this program, please share it with a friend. Help get the word out. I'd appreciate it. I'll be back in 2 weeks with another great adventure. Until next time, adventure on.